Grace Zimmerman wiped the chalk dust from her hands and surveyed the cramped community center room, where 15 kids sat squeezed around 3 folding tables, their backpacks spilling onto the scuffed linoleum floor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one flickering in that maddening way that made her wonder if it might finally give out today, and the radiator clanked like it was trying to communicate in Morse code. She had been running this after-school tutoring program for 2 years now, every weekday from 3:30 until 6, helping kids whose parents worked late or couldn't afford private tutors. She didn't charge a dime, living off her salary as a 4th-grade teacher at Madison Elementary and the small inheritance her grandmother had left her. "Miss Grace, I still don't get fractions," said Miguel, a sweet 10-year-old with thick-rimmed glasses that kept sliding down his nose. She pulled up a chair next to him, her knees bumping the underside of the wobbly table. "Okay, imagine you have a pizza," she began, sketching a circle on his notebook paper. Across the room, Destiny was struggling with spelling words, and twins Emma and Ethan were working through multiplication tables together. Grace moved between them like a dancer in a choreographed routine she had perfected through countless afternoons of organized chaos. The community center let her use this room for free, but it was barely adequate. There was no whiteboard, just an old chalkboard she had found at a garage sale and mounted on the wall herself. The books were donated, many with torn pages or outdated information. The tables were so cramped that kids kept bumping elbows, but the children were learning. That was what mattered. She was explaining long division to Aisha when the door opened and a man walked in. Grace glanced up, assuming it was a parent arriving early for pickup. Instead, she saw someone she didn't recognize, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that looked expensive even from across the room. He had dark hair with just a touch of silver at the temples, a strong jaw, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Can I help you?" Grace asked, standing up and moving toward the door. She was protective of her students, and unexpected visitors always put her on alert. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice deep and warm. "I'm Quentin Morrison. My assistant's daughter attends your tutoring sessions. I was picking her up for him today, emergency at work." "Oh, you must be here for Lily," Grace said, relaxing slightly. She recognized the name. Lily's father, David, worked long hours as a paralegal downtown. "She's right over there. We're not quite done yet, though. About 15 more minutes." "That's fine. I can wait." Quentin stepped further into the room, his gaze traveling from the cracked ceiling tiles to the overflowing bookshelf made from cinder blocks and plywood. "This is where you run the program." Something in his tone made Grace defensive. "The community center is generous enough to let us use the space for free," she said, crossing her arms. "We make it work." "I didn't mean anything negative," Quentin said quickly, holding up his hands. "I'm just observing. David talks about this place all the time. About you. He says you're the reason Lily went from nearly failing to honor roll." Grace felt her cheeks warm. "Lily's a bright kid. She just needed someone to take the time." "Miss Grace, can you help me?" called out Marcus from the back corner. "Excuse me," Grace said, returning to her students. She tried to focus on Marcus's science homework, but she felt hyper-aware of Quentin Morrison standing by the door, watching. There was something about him, an intensity in the way he observed the room, that made her curious despite herself. When the session ended and parents started arriving, Grace helped the kids pack up their materials. Lily, a bright-eyed 8-year-old with curly red hair, ran up to Quentin with her backpack bouncing. "Mr. Morrison, did you come to get me?" "I did, kiddo. Your dad got stuck at the office, so you're riding with me today." "Cool," Lily turned to Grace. "Thank you, Miss Grace. I finished all my homework. That's wonderful, Lily. I'll see you tomorrow. As the room emptied, Grace began erasing the chalkboard and straightening the tables. She was surprised when she turned around to find Quentin still standing there, Lily holding his hand patiently. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. How long have you been doing this?" 2 years. "Why? And you don't charge anything?" Grace shook her head. "These families can't afford tutors. Most of them are working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. I became a teacher to help kids, not to make money off desperate parents." Quentin was quiet for a moment, studying her with those sharp eyes. "That's admirable." "It's just the right thing to do," Grace said, uncomfortable with the praise. She grabbed her worn canvas bag and started loading books into it. "Was there something else you needed?" "No. No, I just wanted to meet the person David keeps talking about. You've made a real difference for Lily." "She makes it easy." Quentin smiled, and it transformed his entire face, softening the sharp edges. "Come on, Lily. Let's get you home." Grace watched them leave, feeling oddly unsettled. There had been something in the way Quentin looked at the space, like he was calculating something. She shook off the feeling and finished packing up. The next afternoon, Grace arrived at the community center to find a note taped to her door. The center's director wanted to see her. Her stomach dropped. The center had been talking about needing more space for their senior programs. What if they were taking away her room? She knocked on Martha's office door, her palms sweating. "Come in, Grace." Martha looked up from her desk, her gray hair pulled back in its usual bun. "Sit down. I have some interesting news. If this is about the room, please let me explain. I can make the space smaller, or we can meet less often." Grace, breathe. "No one's taking your room." Martha's eyes crinkled with a smile. "Actually, quite the opposite. I received a very unusual phone call this morning from a man named Quentin Morrison. Does that name mean anything to you?" Grace's heart skipped. "He came by yesterday. He was picking up one of my students." "Well, apparently he was quite taken with your program. He asked detailed questions about the space limitations, funding, and what it would take to expand." "Grace, do you know who Quentin Morrison is?" She shook her head slowly. "He's the founder and CEO of Morrison Development. They build commercial real estate all over the state, office buildings, shopping centers, that sort of thing. The man is worth at least $50 million, probably more." Grace felt the air leave her lungs. "What?" "He's looking into making a donation to support your tutoring program. He wanted to know what you needed most." "I don't understand. Why would he do that?" Martha leaned back in her chair. "Why don't you ask him yourself? He left his number and asked if you'd be willing to meet with him." Grace left the office with a business card clutched in her hand, her mind spinning. A millionaire had watched her teach for 15 minutes and now wanted to donate to her program. It seemed surreal. She stared at the embossed card. Quentin Morrison, CEO, Morrison Development. There was a phone number and an email address. She should be thrilled. This could mean new books, better supplies, maybe even a bigger space. But something nagged at her. She had learned to be wary of wealthy people who wanted to help. They often came with strings attached, wanting control or publicity. She had started this program to help kids, not to become some rich man's pet charity project. Still, she couldn't ignore the possibility. If Quentin Morrison was genuinely interested in helping, she owed it to her students to at least hear him out. That evening after dinner, Grace sat on her small apartment couch and stared at her phone. Finally, she took a deep breath and dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. "Quentin Morrison." "Hi, this is Grace Zimmerman. Martha from the community center gave me your number. Grace, thank you for calling." His voice sounded pleased. "Do you have time to meet? I'd like to discuss your program." "I guess I'm confused about why," Grace said honestly. You saw my tutoring session for all of 15 minutes. What made you want to get involved? There was a pause. Fair question. Can I buy you coffee tomorrow? I'd rather explain in person. Grace hesitated. I have tutoring until 6. Breakfast then. There's a diner near the community center, Rosie's. Do you know it? I know it. 7:30. Okay, 7:30. After she hung up, Grace sat staring at her phone, wondering what she had just agreed to. Rosie's Diner was a Madison neighborhood institution, with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that could strip paint. Grace arrived exactly on time, spotting Quentin already seated in a corner booth. He stood when he saw her, which surprised her. Her ex-boyfriend had never bothered with gestures like that. "Thanks for meeting me," Quentin said as she slid into the opposite side of the booth. A waitress appeared, pouring coffee without asking. Grace ordered toast and eggs, and Quentin did the same. "So," Grace said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Why are you interested in my tutoring program?" Quentin added cream to his coffee, measuring his words. "I grew up not far from here. Different neighborhood, but similar. My mom worked 2 jobs after my dad left. She was a waitress during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. I was a latchkey kid, basically raising myself and my little sister." Grace hadn't expected that. She had assumed someone like him had grown up with money. "I was smart enough," Quentin continued, "but I was drowning in school. No one at home to help with homework, no structure, no support. I was probably 6 months from dropping out when I was 14. Then I met this man, Mr. Henderson. He owned a construction company, and he hired me to sweep up job sites after school. But he did more than that. He made sure I did my homework before I started working. He checked my grades. He talked to me about college like it was something I could actually do, not some impossible dream." "He sounds like a good man," Grace said softly. "He changed my life. Got me thinking about architecture, about building things. I worked for him all through high school, and he helped me get a scholarship to State University. When he died 5 years ago, I went to his funeral, and I realized I had never properly thanked him, never paid forward what he did for me." The waitress brought their food, but Grace barely noticed. She was watching Quentin's face, seeing the emotion there. "When I picked up Lily and saw you in that cramped room, with that broken-down furniture and those kids who clearly adored you, I saw Mr. Henderson. I saw someone who was changing lives because it was the right thing to do, not because they were getting anything out of it. David has told me about you, about how you stay late to help kids who are struggling, how you buy supplies with your own money. You're doing what Mr. Henderson did for me." Grace felt a lump in her throat. "I'm just a teacher." "You're not just anything," Quentin said firmly. "And I want to help. Really help, not just write a check and feel good about myself. I want to understand what you need and make it happen." "Why?" Grace asked. "And please don't think I'm ungrateful, but wealthy people don't usually operate this way. What's in it for you?" Quentin met her eyes, and she was struck by how honest his gaze was. "Nothing. I don't want publicity. I don't want my name on anything. I don't want control over your program. I have more money than I know what to do with, and I'd like to use some of it to help kids who were like me. That's it." Grace studied him, trying to detect any hint of insincerity. She found none. "What kind of help are we talking about? What do you need? Really need if money wasn't an issue?" Grace laughed, a short, surprised sound. "I don't even know where to start. More space, definitely. I have to turn kids away because we can't fit them. New books, computers for the kids to practice typing and do research. Better furniture that doesn't wobble. Supplies, art materials, maybe some educational games, a proper whiteboard, better lighting. I have a list a mile long." "What if you could have all of it? That would cost thousands of dollars. What if I said money isn't an issue?" Grace set down her fork. I'd say you're either crazy or too good to be true, Quentin smiled. I'm neither. I'm just someone who wants to help. Here's what I'm thinking. I own some properties around the city, commercial buildings mostly. I have a space about 2 miles from the community center. It used to be a small office building, 4,000 square feet, good parking in a safe area. It's been vacant for a year. I'm proposing I renovate it specifically for your tutoring program. Multiple rooms so you can separate kids by age or subject. A computer lab. A library area. A small kitchen for snacks. Proper furniture, supplies, everything you need. And I'll set up a fund to cover ongoing expenses, utilities, supplies, whatever comes up. Grace felt dizzy. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. That would cost a fortune. The renovation alone, Grace. Quentin leaned forward. I have the money. I've been looking for the right way to give back, the right project that matters. This is it. You're doing incredible work with almost nothing. Imagine what you could do with actual resources. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me show you the space. Grace's mind was reeling. A building. He was talking about giving her an entire building. It seemed impossible, like something from a dream, but his expression was earnest, patient, waiting for her response. Why me? She finally asked. There must be hundreds of programs like mine. But I found yours, Quentin said simply. And something tells me you're exactly the kind of person who will use this gift the right way. Grace took a shaky breath. Can I see the building? Quentin's face broke into a genuine smile that made her heart skip unexpectedly. How about Saturday morning? The building was in a quiet neighborhood lined with oak trees and small businesses. It was a 2-story brick structure with large windows and a parking lot that could hold about 20 cars. As Quentin unlocked the door and led Grace inside, she could see the potential immediately. The space was empty but clean, with good bones. Hardwood floors that needed refinishing, high ceilings with exposed beams, plenty of natural light streaming through those big windows. The layout was open on the first floor with a few smaller offices in the back, and upstairs was divided into several medium-sized rooms. I'm thinking the first floor could be your main tutoring area, Quentin said, his voice echoing in the empty space. We could set up different stations for different subjects. The back offices could be storage and a teacher's lounge, maybe a small kitchen. Upstairs, we could create quiet study rooms, a computer lab, and a library. Grace walked through the space, her footsteps loud on the dusty floor. She could picture it so clearly, kids spreading out instead of being crammed together. Bookshelves full of new books, computers where students could learn to type and research, quiet spaces for kids who needed less distraction, room to grow to help more children. This is too much, she whispered. Quentin was standing by one of the windows, the morning light illuminating his profile. He turned to look at her. Why? Because I didn't do anything to deserve this. I'm just doing my job. You're doing more than your job and you know it. Grace, stop fighting this. Let someone help you. She met his eyes across the empty room. There was something in his expression that made her breath catch, an intensity that had nothing to do with the building. You really want to do this? She asked. I really do. Then yes. Yes, and thank you. I don't have words for how much this means. Quentin crossed the room in a few long strides, and for a moment Grace thought he might hug her. Instead, he held out his hand. She took it, and the handshake lasted a beat longer than professional, his grip warm and solid. Partners then, he said, partners. Over the next few weeks, Grace saw Quentin more than she had expected. He wanted her input on every aspect of the renovation, from the paint colors to the furniture choices to the layout of the computer lab. They met several times a week, sometimes at the building site, sometimes over coffee or lunch. Grace found herself looking forward to these meetings, and not just because of the building. Quentin was different from anyone she had ever known. He was brilliant in business, with a sharp mind that could calculate costs and timelines in seconds. But he was also surprisingly thoughtful, remembering small details she mentioned in passing. When she had mentioned loving tulips, he had brought coffee in a travel mug with tulips printed on it the next time they met. When she had complained about her ancient car breaking down, he had given her the number of an honest mechanic who owed him a favor. "You don't have to do that," she had protested about the mechanic. "I want to," he had said, with that direct gaze that made her heart flutter. Grace tried not to read too much into it. Quentin was a wealthy, handsome businessman who probably had women throwing themselves at him constantly. She was a teacher living paycheck to paycheck in a tiny apartment. They were from different worlds. This was about the tutoring program, nothing more. But then there were moments that made her wonder. Like the afternoon they were at the building site, discussing where to place the bookshelves, and a worker had dropped a board that nearly hit Grace. Quentin had grabbed her arm and pulled her aside so fast she stumbled into his chest. His arms had come around her to steady her, and for a moment they had stood there, her hands on his shoulders, his hands on her waist. Their eyes had met, and the air had felt electric. "You okay?" he had asked, his voice rough. "Fine," she had managed, stepping back quickly. "Thank you." Or the evening, they had stayed late looking at furniture catalogs, and Grace had gotten so excited about a reading nook design that she had grabbed Quentin's hand without thinking. He had turned his hand to lace his fingers through hers, and they had sat like that for several heartbeats before Grace had pulled away, blushing. She told herself she was imagining things, but her best friend, Maya, wasn't convinced. "He's totally into you," Maya said one Friday night over wine at Grace's apartment. Maya was a nurse with a no-nonsense attitude and an uncanny ability to read people. "He's not into me. He's helping the tutoring program. Grace, the man is literally building you a custom facility. He brings you coffee. He remembers your favorite flowers. Wake up. He's a millionaire, Maya. He probably has a girlfriend or multiple girlfriends or, I don't know, a wife. So ask him." "I can't just ask him if he's single. That would be so obvious." Maya rolled her eyes. "You're 28 years old, not 16. If you like him, do something about it." "I never said I liked him." "You didn't have to. You've mentioned him approximately 40 times since I got here an hour ago." Grace threw a pillow at her, but she couldn't deny the truth. She did like Quentin. More than liked him. She found herself thinking about him at odd moments, wondering what he was doing, replaying their conversations. When her phone buzzed with a text from him, her whole day got brighter. She had never felt this way before, not even with her ex-boyfriend Jake, who she had dated for 2 years. The problem was, she had no idea if Quentin felt the same way. He was friendly and warm, but he was like that with everyone. She had seen him talking to the construction workers, remembering their names and asking about their families. Maybe she was just another person he was being kind to. The building renovation took 8 weeks. Grace stopped by several times a week, watching the transformation with wonder. The hardwood floors were refinished to a warm honey color. The walls were painted in cheerful but calming colors. Soft blue in the main tutoring area, warm yellow in the reading room, forest green in the quiet study spaces. New lighting fixtures went up, modern but not cold, providing bright light without the harsh glare of fluorescence. The furniture started arriving in the final week, tables and chairs that were actually level and comfortable. A sectional couch for the reading nook. Bean-bag chairs in a variety of colors for the kids. Bookshelves, filing cabinets, desks for the tutors. A full computer lab with 15 new computers and a printer. A whiteboard in every room. art supplies, math manipulatives, science kits, board games, puzzles. It was more than Grace had ever dreamed of. Quentin had hired a professional organizer to help set everything up, but Grace insisted on being there, wanting to ensure everything was arranged in a way that would work for teaching. She and Quentin spent 2 full days unpacking and organizing, often working late into the evening. It was during one of these late nights, around 9 o'clock, when they were shelving books in what would be the library area, that something shifted between them. Grace was on a step stool, reaching for a high shelf when she lost her balance. Quentin caught her, his hands firm on her waist as she gripped his shoulders. "You should be more careful," he said, but he didn't let go. "You should stop catching me," Grace said, her voice coming out breathier than she intended. "I'm starting to think you like playing hero." "Maybe I do." His eyes were locked on hers, and the intensity there made her dizzy. "Or maybe I just like being close to you." Grace's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Quentin, I've been wanting to say something," he interrupted, his voice low. "But I didn't want to make things awkward with the building project. I didn't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable." "Say what?" "That I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the day I walked into that community center. That every excuse I've found to meet with you, to be near you, hasn't been about the building. That I'm completely falling for you." Grace couldn't breathe. "You are." "I am. Have been, probably from the start. The way you care about those kids, the way you light up when you talk about teaching, the way you laugh, the way you see the good in everyone. You're extraordinary, Grace." "I'm not extraordinary. I'm completely ordinary." "You couldn't be ordinary if you tried." His thumb traced a small circle on her waist, sending shivers through her. "Tell me I'm not imagining this. Tell me you feel something too." "I feel it," Grace whispered. "I've been trying not to. I thought we were from such different worlds. I thought you couldn't possibly be interested in someone like me." "Someone like you? Grace, you're the most real person I've met in years. Do you know how rare that is? Most people, especially in my world, want something from me. My money, my connections, my status. You fought me on every step of this project, trying to make sure I wasn't giving you too much. You never ask for anything. You just give and give. That's not special. That's just being a decent person. It's special to me." Quentin's hands moved from her waist to cup her face, his touch gentle. "Can I kiss you?" In answer, Grace closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them testing the waters. Then Quentin deepened it, pulling her closer, and Grace felt like she was melting. Her hands slid from his shoulders into his hair, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat through her entire body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quentin rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" "I told you, I didn't want to mess up what we were building here. The tutoring center is important. I didn't want my feelings to complicate things. And now the building is almost done and I can't wait any longer. Grace, I want to take you out. A real date." "Will you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" Grace smiled, her heart soaring. "Yes, definitely yes." Their first official date was at an Italian restaurant that Quentin insisted was the best in the city. He picked Grace up at 7, and when she opened her apartment door, the look on his face made her glad she had spent an hour picking out the right dress. A simple blue wrap dress that Maya had declared perfect. "You look beautiful," Quentin said, handing her a bouquet of tulips. "You remembered." "I remember everything you tell me." Dinner was wonderful. They talked about everything, their conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Quentin told her more about his childhood, about building his company from nothing, about the pressure and loneliness that sometimes came with success. Grace told him about her family, her parents who had retired to Florida, her younger brother who was in the military, her love of teaching that had started when she was tutoring classmates in middle school. "I always knew I wanted to work with kids," Grace said over dessert. There's something magical about that moment when a concept clicks for a student. When they go from "I can't do this" to "I understand." It never gets old. "That's how I feel about construction," Quentin said. "Seeing something go from an idea on paper to a physical structure that people use. Creating something tangible. Is that why you started your company?" "Partly. Also because I wanted to prove I could. I came from nothing, Grace. There were a lot of people who thought I'd never amount to anything. Building a successful company, making something of myself, that was my way of proving them wrong." "You definitely proved them wrong." Quentin reached across the table and took her hand. "You know what's funny? I've accomplished everything I set out to do. Built the company, made the money, earned the respect. But I've been feeling like something was missing. Then I met you, and suddenly I understand what it was." "What?" "Purpose beyond myself. You've been doing that all along, making a difference in individual lives. I got so caught up in building and growing and succeeding that I forgot why I started. Mr. Henderson helped me because he cared about people, not because he wanted to build an empire. You're reminding me of that." Grace squeezed his hand. "You're making a difference now. That tutoring center is going to change lives. We're making a difference. This is a partnership, remember?" After dinner, Quentin drove Grace home but walked her to her door, his hand warm on the small of her back. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Grace said, turning to face him in the dim hallway. "So did I." Quentin tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Can I see you again, soon?" "How soon?" "Tomorrow," Grace laughed. "I have tutoring until 6. Then dinner tomorrow at 7. And the next night. And the night after that. I want to spend every moment I can with you, Grace." Her heart melted. "You're going to spoil me. That's the plan." He leaned down and kissed her, slow and sweet, leaving her breathless. Over the next few weeks, Grace and Quentin fell into a pattern. He would often stop by the community center at the end of her tutoring sessions, helping her pack up, and then taking her to dinner or back to his place to cook together. On weekends, they explored the city, going to museums and parks and little restaurants Quentin knew. He introduced her to his world gradually, never pushing, always making sure she was comfortable. Grace met David properly, Quentin's assistant, who was more like a friend and whose daughter, Lily, adored Grace. She met some of Quentin's business associates at a casual dinner party, where she was nervous at first but quickly realized that Quentin's closest friends were down-to-earth people who genuinely cared about him. Quentin met Maya, who gave him the 3rd degree over brunch and then later texted Grace. "He's perfect and clearly obsessed with you. Don't screw this up." The tutoring center opened on a Saturday in October, 6 months after that first breakfast at Rosie's Diner. Grace had invited all her students and their families, and the turnout was overwhelming. Kids ran through the space with wide eyes, marveling at the books and computers and art supplies. Parents hugged Grace with tears in their eyes, thanking her for everything she was doing. Quentin stayed in the background, not wanting to take attention away from Grace and the program. But Grace found him in the library area, watching the celebration with a satisfied smile. "Thank you," she said, slipping her hand into his, "for all of this, for believing in what I was doing." "You don't have to thank me. This has been one of the best things I've ever done. Seeing those kids' faces, knowing this space is going to help so many children, that's worth more than any business deal I've ever made." "You're a good man, Quentin Morrison." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You make me want to be better." The tutoring program thrived in its new space. Grace was able to accept more students, eventually bringing on 2 other volunteer tutors to help manage the growing numbers. The kids loved the new building, and their academic performance showed measurable improvement. Grace kept detailed records, watching with pride as reading levels increased and math scores went up. Quentin continued to be involved, stopping by regularly to check on things and help out however he could. The kids loved him, especially when he started a monthly construction workshop, teaching basic building skills and safety. Grace would watch him with the children, seeing how patient and kind he was, and fall a little more in love with him each time, because she was definitely in love with him. Completely, head over heels in love. It had happened gradually and then all at once, sneaking up on her until one night, lying in Quentin's arms after he had cooked her dinner at his downtown loft, she had realized she couldn't imagine her life without him. She hadn't told him yet. The words felt too big, too scary. What if he didn't feel the same way? What if this was just a relationship for him, not the relationship? But then, 3 months after the center opened on a cold December evening, everything changed. They were at Grace's apartment, curled up on her couch watching a movie when Quentin's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. I should take this. It's my sister. Grace paused the movie, trying not to listen but unable to help it in the small space. She could hear the panic in the woman's voice even though she couldn't make out the words. Slow down, Rachel. What happened? Quentin's voice was calm but concerned. Okay, I'll be there. No, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. I'll leave now. He hung up and turned to Grace, his expression troubled. I'm sorry I have to go. That was my sister. She's in Springfield, about 3 hours away. Her husband had a heart attack. He's in the hospital and she's a mess. She needs me. Of course, go. Is he okay? He's stable, but she's scared. She has 2 kids and she's trying to manage the hospital and them, and she's overwhelmed. Do you want company? Grace asked. For the drive? Quentin looked surprised. You'd come with me, if you want me to. 3 hours is a long drive alone when you're worried. Something shifted in Quentin's expression, softening into something that made Grace's breath catch. I'd love that, but we might need to stay overnight. Is that okay? Let me pack a bag. They drove through the night, Quentin's hand holding Grace's when he wasn't shifting gears. They talked about his sister, about family, about fears and worries. Grace saw a side of Quentin she hadn't before, vulnerable and concerned, the cool businessman facade completely gone. Rachel met them at the hospital, a petite brunette with Quentin's eyes. She hugged her brother fiercely, then turned to Grace. Thank you for coming. You must be Grace. Quentin talks about you constantly. He does. All the time. I know more about you than I do about some of my friends. Rachel managed a weak smile despite the tears on her face. Come on. Tom's asking for Quentin. Tom was stable, as Quentin had said, but he would need surgery. Rachel was trying to be strong, but Grace could see she was barely holding it together. While Quentin spent time with Tom, Grace took Rachel to the cafeteria for terrible coffee. I'm so scared, Rachel admitted. What if something happens during surgery? What if he doesn't make it? How do I tell our kids that their father might not come home? Grace took her hand. Tom is strong. The doctors are good. And no matter what happens, you're not alone. You have Quentin, and from what I've seen, he'll move heaven and earth to help you. He's been like that since we were kids. Always taking care of me, always protecting me. When our dad left, Quentin was only 12, but he stepped up. Made sure I got to school, helped me with homework, scared off boys who looked at me wrong. Rachel laughed through her tears. He acts all tough in business, but he has the biggest heart. I know, Grace said softly. He's in love with you, you know. Grace's heart stopped. He told you that. He didn't have to, I can see it. The way he looks at you, the way he talks about you, I've never seen him like this with anyone. He dated plenty, but it was always casual. You're different. Grace didn't know what to say. She wanted to believe Rachel, but fear held her back. They stayed in Springfield for 3 days, waiting for Tom's surgery and recovery. Grace called Maya to cover her tutoring sessions and spent the time supporting Rachel and watching Quentin be an amazing uncle to his 8-year-old niece and 6-year-old nephew. He took them to the park, played games with them, kept them distracted and happy while their mother dealt with the hospital stress. Watching him build a block tower with his nephew, making silly voices and laughing, Grace felt her heart expand. This was the man she loved. Strong and successful, yes, but also kind and family-oriented and wonderful with children. On the drive home after Tom was out of surgery and stable, Quentin was quiet, processing everything. They were about an hour from the city when he finally spoke. "Thank you for coming with me. Having you there made everything easier. I'm glad I could help. Grace, I need to tell you something. These past few days, seeing you with my family, seeing how you supported Rachel and entertained the kids, it made something very clear to me." Grace's heart started pounding. "What's that?" Quentin pulled off at the next exit and parked in an empty rest area. He turned to face her, taking both her hands. "I'm in love with you. Completely, totally in love with you. I have been for months, but I was scared to say it. Scared I'd scare you away, scared it was too soon, scared of a million things. But life is short and unpredictable, and I don't want to waste any more time not telling you how I feel." Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. "I love you too, so much." "I was terrified to say it, terrified you didn't feel the same way." Quentin laughed, pulling her into his arms as much as the car's center console would allow. "How could I not feel the same way? Grace, you're everything I didn't know I was looking for. You've changed my entire life." "You changed mine first. You believed in me and what I was trying to do. You gave me the resources to really make a difference. We make a good team, the best team." Quentin kissed her, deep and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both smiling, he rested his forehead against hers. "Move in with me," he said. Grace pulled back, surprised. "What? I know it's fast, and I know your apartment is your space, but I hate saying goodnight to you. I hate waking up without you. I want to fall asleep with you every night and wake up with you every morning. Move in with me." "Quentin, that's a big step. I know. And if you're not ready, that's okay, I can wait. But I wanted you to know that I'm ready. I'm all in, Grace." Grace thought about her tiny apartment, about coming home to an empty space every night. Then she thought about Quentin's loft, warm and inviting, about falling asleep in his arms and waking up to his smile, about building a life together. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Yes, I'll move in with you." Quentin's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. He kissed her again and again, until they were both laughing breathlessly. Moving in together was easier than Grace had expected. Quentin cleared space in his closets and drawers, making sure she felt like the loft was truly hers as much as his. Grace brought her books and her grandmother's quilt and the photos that mattered, leaving behind the furniture that didn't fit. Maya helped with the move, making jokes about Grace moving up in the world but clearly happy for her friend. "He's good for you," Maya said as they unpacked boxes in the loft's spacious bedroom. "I've never seen you this happy." "I've never been this happy," Grace admitted. "Sometimes I worry I'm going to wake up and it will all be a dream." "It's not a dream. It's real, and you deserve every bit of it." Living with Quentin was wonderful and comfortable and right in a way Grace had never experienced before. They fell into routines easily, cooking dinner together, talking about their days, making plans for the weekend. Quentin's loft became their home, filled with laughter and warmth. The tutoring center continued to grow. Grace hired 2 part-time paid tutors to supplement the volunteers, using funds from an endowment Quentin had set up. They started offering summer programs to prevent learning loss during the break. Local news did a story on the center, and suddenly Grace was fielding calls from other teachers interested in starting similar programs. "You should expand," Quentin said one evening as they discussed a call from a teacher across town. "You've created something amazing. Why not help others replicate it? That would be a full-time job in itself. So make it your full-time job. Start a nonprofit, hire staff, create a model that other communities can use. Grace, you have something special here. Don't let it stay small just because you're scared of growing." She thought about it. The idea was exciting and terrifying in equal measure. But Quentin was right. She had proven the model worked. Why not help it spread? "Would you help me?" she asked. "I'll do whatever you need. Business planning, funding, connections, manual labor. I'm your partner. Remember?" Grace launched the nonprofit 6 months later, calling it Bright Futures Tutoring. With Quentin's business expertise and connections, she was able to set up the structure efficiently. She hired a small staff, developed curriculum and training materials, and began working with teachers in 3 different neighborhoods to establish new tutoring centers. It was exhausting and exhilarating. Grace still taught at Madison Elementary because she loved her students, but her afternoons and weekends were devoted to Bright Futures. Quentin supported her every step of the way, offering advice when asked, handling legal and financial details, and making sure she didn't burn herself out. "You need to take care of yourself too," he'd remind her when she worked too late or skipped meals. He'd show up with dinner or drag her away from her laptop for a walk or a movie. A year after moving in together, on the anniversary of the day they first kissed in the tutoring center library, Quentin took Grace back to that building. It was evening after the last tutoring session, and the space was quiet and dim. "Why are we here?" Grace asked as Quentin led her to the library area. "Because this is where everything changed for us, where I finally told you how I felt. I remember. I was on that step stool arranging books. You were, and I caught you just like I'd been wanting to catch you for weeks." Quentin turned to face her, taking both her hands. "Grace, this past year and a half has been the best of my life. You've made me happier than I knew was possible. You've given me purpose and love and a future I can't wait for." Grace's heart was pounding. "Quentin." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Marry me, Grace. Be my wife, my partner, my everything. Let's build a life together, a family together. I promise to support your dreams, to catch you when you fall, to love you every single day for the rest of my life." He opened the box, revealing a beautiful diamond ring that caught the light from the windows. Tears streamed down Grace's face. "Yes, yes, of course yes." Quentin slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her deeply. Grace kissed him back, pouring all her love and joy and excitement into it. "I can't believe this is real," she whispered against his lips. "Believe it, you're stuck with me now. Good, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." They were married 8 months later in a small ceremony at the main tutoring center, surrounded by family and friends and many of the kids Grace had tutored over the years. Rachel and Tom were there, healthy and happy. David and Lily. Maya, who cried through the entire ceremony. Grace's parents, who had flown in from Florida and immediately loved Quentin. And dozens of students whose lives Grace had touched. Grace wore a simple white dress and carried tulips. Quentin wore a charcoal suit that matched his eyes and looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I love you," he said as they exchanged vows. "You've changed everything. I love you too. Thank you for seeing me. How could I not? You're impossible to miss." Their reception was casual and joyful, with kids running around and laughter filling the space. Grace looked around at the building Quentin had built for her, at the programs they had created together, at the faces of children who were thriving because someone believed in them. She felt Quentin's arm around her waist and leaned into him. "Happy," he murmured, "incredibly. You, more than I can say." 2 years after their wedding, Grace stood in the nursery of their new house, a beautiful craftsman in a family-friendly neighborhood that they had chosen together, rocking their 3-month-old daughter, Emma Rachel Morrison. The baby had Quentin's dark hair and Grace's green eyes, and she was absolutely perfect. Quentin appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened after a long day. His face softened as he saw his wife and daughter. "She asleep," he whispered. "Finally. She fought it for an hour. That's my girl." Stubborn like her mother, Grace carefully laid Emma in her crib, and she and Quentin stood there for a moment, watching their daughter sleep. Quentin's arm came around Grace's shoulders and she leaned against him. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For everything. For seeing me that day in the community center. For believing in the tutoring program. For loving me. For this beautiful life we've built. Grace, I should be thanking you. You gave me purpose, a family, a reason to wake up excited every day. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." They walked to their bedroom, Grace changing into comfortable pajamas while Quentin did the same. As they climbed into bed, Grace thought about how much her life had changed in 4 years. The tutoring program, now Bright Futures Tutoring, had expanded to 15 locations across the state, helping hundreds of kids every week. Grace had been featured in education magazines, had spoken at conferences, had inspired countless other teachers to start similar programs. She had left her teaching position at Madison Elementary to run the nonprofit full-time, though she still volunteered to tutor twice a week because she missed working directly with kids. Quentin's business continued to thrive, but he had shifted his focus toward community development projects, building affordable housing and community centers. He served on the Bright Futures Board and was actively involved in every aspect of the organization. Together, they had created something meaningful, something lasting. "What are you thinking about?" Quentin asked, pulling her close. "Just how lucky I am. How unlikely this all is. If David hadn't had that emergency, if you hadn't come to pick up Lily, we might never have met." "I don't believe that. I think we would have found each other somehow. Some things are meant to be. You're such a romantic. Only with you." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "I love you, Grace Morrison. I love you too." As they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Grace thought about that cramped community center room where she had started tutoring kids 5 years ago. She had just been trying to help, never imagining it would lead to all of this. A beautiful building, a thriving nonprofit, a husband who loved her completely, a daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall. She had tutored kids after school for free because it was the right thing to do. And a millionaire had donated a building to give her better space. But what she had gained was so much more than space. She had gained a partner, a love, a family, a future brighter than anything she could have dreamed. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness led to the biggest miracles. Sometimes helping others helped you find exactly what you needed. And sometimes, when you gave freely without expecting anything in return, the universe gave you everything you never knew you wanted. Grace had learned that love could be found in the most unexpected places, with the most unexpected people. That wealth wasn't measured in money, but in the lives you touched and the love you shared. That two people from different worlds could create something beautiful together. As sleep pulled her under, Grace smiled, feeling Quentin's heartbeat steady against her back, knowing their daughter slept safely nearby. This was her life now. This beautiful, unlikely, perfect life, and she wouldn't change a single thing. Years from now, when Emma was old enough to understand, Grace would tell her the story of how her parents met. about a cramped tutoring room and a generous donation, and two people who fell in love while building something bigger than themselves. She would tell her daughter that kindness matters, that education matters, that helping others is never wasted. But most importantly, she would tell Emma that love finds you when you're being your truest self. That the right person will see you, really see you, and love everything they find. That partnerships are built on respect and support and shared values. That wealth without purpose is empty, but purpose with love is everything. Grace had tutored kids after school for free, and a millionaire had donated a building to give her better space. But what they had really given each other was the chance to be seen, to be valued, to be loved completely. And that was worth more than any building, any amount of money, any success. That was worth everything.